Hey everyone, you're live with Necee. I am your host, Opal Bailey, and I have a special young lady with me. Her name is Terry. Good morning, Terry.
Good morning, Opal.
How are you today?
I am wonderful, thank you.
I just want to give you like a little history. I met Terry at No, which she's the owner of that establishment, and we began to talk about life and the challenges that we seldom face in life and how we overcome them. So I definitely invited her to come on and share with you guys her life story and the challenges that she's faced and how she's overcome them and what she's doing now. So, Terry, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what's going on with you?
Well, I am from Georgia, from Swanee, Alpharetta area in Georgia, and I grew up in Dunwoody, Georgia, and we moved here a year ago, and I opened up my shop in Cocoa Village, the Vintage Bungalow. And as you were saying, you came to my shop for my girls' night out, and we started talking, and I told you about my cancer that I had and the way that I was treated by certain doctors up in Georgia. And if I had not gone to another doctor just by accident of having a brain aneurysm in my head, not remembering, I would have never known that I had cancer, because the doctor that I saw, she just blew it off. She literally blew off my pap smear and told me that it came back with a negative result, but she was not concerned and that they would just check it out later. When I went back to my family doctor, he asked me if I had had a pap smear the month before, because I had some problems, and I couldn't remember, and I just said no. When he did one, he called me 2 days later and told me over the phone that I had cancer cells show up, and he wanted it to be checked because, as you're aware, you can go in and have a pap smear done, and it will have a false positive, and that could happen from somebody breathing on the swab, or it get contaminated just by the ear or something like that. So what a good reputable doctor normally does is have you have another one to recheck that. And then if it comes back a positive again, then they go in and check you. So that's what he did, whereas my first doctor chose just to drop it and let it go.
So with that in mind, you said you had a brain aneurysm.
Oh, well, I know. I mean, it was just a brain fart, if I can say that. Sorry. I totally forgot that when Dr. Liam is his name, when Dr. Liam asked me, did you have a pap smear a month before when I had gone in to see Dr. Reyes, I totally forgot that she had done one because she just blew it off, like no big deal. And then, so he did it because I had a full physical. So he did another one, and his came back positive for cancer cells. So I had cervical cancer, and I had the HPV virus. I had gotten that in my 20s, and I've only had one other pap smear that came back a false positive, and then when they checked it back out, it was fine, and that was in my 20s when I had that done. I don't see doctors. As I told you, I'm not one to go see a doctor. I saw doctors when I was pregnant. That's the only time. And but now they're giving shots for HPV to both boys and girls, which I would highly recommend because it's so prevalent. You know, anybody gets it.
For those that are listening, could you explain what is HPV?
I think it is, I'm not for sure, so everybody can get mad at me because I'm not one to check things out. It's a sexually transmitted.
Okay.
But you can, and I'm not for sure because I know that girls 12 years old can get it. So it's something that you can get, and it could be in your system, like with me. I'm 54 years old. It could have never gone into a cancer cell. It would just be there, and the doctors just check it, but it would never go into, whereas on certain people it does. So and it causes cervical cancer in women. So my when we checked it out, because of the Dr. Reyes that I had seen, I totally just didn't want to have any kind of surgery. I didn't want to do anything because I just totally did not like her. I didn't want to go back to her. They were the ones that my doctor recommended to do the surgery. And I was just like, no. So I actually waited almost a year before I had the surgery done. And it was my sister in Colorado and her doctor out there that convinced me to have the surgery.
So how did you feel knowing that when you went to have your yearly check,
Yes.
that it was dismissed or not sought after further, and then you go to another doctor and he says, no, you're positive? What was going through your mind?
I was like uber angry. I mean, seriously, I just don't like doctors. And that only proved, and I haven't been to a doctor since. I have been once. But Dr. Reyes, they are a pediatric doctor, but they're a GYN or whatever. And they're a husband and wife that are together. And when I went into her, I was having some other problems. And she took care of that problem. But then when she blew that off and came back and told me that I had a problem, but it was no big deal, I feel like she does that to her patients. If she did it to me, and then when I went back into her, because Dr. Liam told me to go back to her to have the second Pap smear done because his came back, she started telling me I was an idiot. She told me that this was wasting her time doing this. She already told me I had the HPV virus, that this was totally uncalled for, and it made her look bad. So when I started crying in the doctor's office, and I got up to leave. I was just like, we're not doing it then. Obviously it's no big deal. And I got out, I started getting up, and she said no, that she had to do this. She had to do it because the doctor had put in an order for it. And she didn't even call me back. It was her husband that called me back to tell me that I had to come in for the results. And I told him I wasn't coming back to them. He could just give me the result of that. And obviously nothing was wrong. Your wife already called me an idiot, that this was just, ridiculous to have this going on. Obviously nothing's wrong. And he wouldn't give me the results. And then when I went in, the first thing he says is, you have cancer. And when I asked him how in 4 weeks I got cancer, when she checked me out, all's good. I went back to another doctor for a full physical. He came up with the results that I had cancer. I go back to her, and it's cancer all over my uterus and everything. How could that be misdiagnosed there because of his wife? And he said that she just didn't swab the same area or something. So that's how that went down.
So when you went to the first doctor, what made you decide to go to the other doctor for a full physical?
So I went, Dr. Liam is a full doctor or whatever. But he's not a GYN. I had been bleeding. I had been spotting for a year. And he wanted me to go see Dr. Reyes. He told me to go see her, to have her check me out down there. Because he's not a gynecologist. So, and she is. Mm-hmm. So he told me to go to her, and I went to her, and I had a little polyp on my cervix. And she just cut that off, and it was good. So he wanted me to come back after that had healed to have my full physical, to have my blood workup and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And that's when he asked me, did you have the Pap smear? And I just totally forgot.
So in the process, all that, how was you dealing with all of that? How are you and your husband dealing with, evidently it must have been chaotic because the up and down and going back and forth.
And the back and forth. And he, the first person I called was my mom, because she had cancer before, and, and talked to her, and then we prayed. And then, when I told my husband, he talked to somebody and found out about cervical cancer, and he was like, it can go two ways. You can get it out quickly and we'll be done. Or, if you don't, it's going to spread and go further. And we didn't know how far it was with me. And as I told you earlier, my sister in Colorado, she's the one that I just trust with everything. She sees all different kinds of doctors, naturalist doctors. She doesn't like the regular doctors as well, but she'll go to them. Obviously, you should go to your doctor. So I sent all my paperwork to her, and she had her friend, which was a doctor, check it out. And then her friend was the one, after a while, we had done some other tests, that told me that I needed to go, that the type that I had was, it could spread,
So what kind of treatment? So once you made the decision to go forward with it,
yeah.
What was your...
So like I told you, I feel like I shouldn't be here, because I feel like even though I did have cancer, I didn't have radiation. I didn't have chemo or anything like that. With mine, it was just very easy to go in. Once they got in, they thought it was just on the cervix. And on that, once they got in, it was in my uterus. And it was on the wall of my uterus. And if it had gone all the way through, then I would have had more problems with everything else. So they went in. I was out of my work. I worked up at Pike Nursery, and I was out of work for 6 weeks. How they did it was a laser surgery. And the way the nurse explained it to me, which the doctors never explained this to me, again, they just didn't explain it. It's like an octopus that comes down. So the doctor is actually not even in the room. He's in another room with his hands on the machine. And so they take it from down there and they pull it out. So they only make 3 incisions, and they pulled all that out. So I still have my ovaries. But I had the 6 weeks where I couldn't move a lot, and everything. But then I had other problems because I've never had stitches and things like that. I'm allergic to stitcher tape. So my whole stomach, where they had gone into me, I had welts as big as my thumbs and didn't know what was going on. And I was allergic to stitcher tape. So I was actually out of work longer. But with me, like I said, I didn't have the chemo or the radiation like my mother had and everything like that. So it was just very easy. But if I had waited, it could have been worse.
Well, that's a good thing, though, even though you didn't have as detailed as some other people,
yes.
The surgeries and the chemo and radiation, you still had a major surgery and you still had an issue
yes.
that had to be dealt with. So how was the caregiving during your time of recuperation? My
sister flew from Colorado and stayed with me for 2 weeks. So she left her family and children and came. She actually took me to the doctor that morning with one of my friends and was there and then helped me home. And then she was with me the whole time that I was trying to recuperate. So for the first 2 weeks, to make sure I could get around and everything, cooking and stuff like that.
So what was you going through your mind having someone help you, coming from, you could do it yourself to...
I'm not good with that at all. Yeah.
I can tell that.
Yeah. Bless my sister's soul. She's 8 years younger than me. She's born the day before me. And we're very similar to each other. And she would try to baby me. And obviously, I want to get out of bed. I want to do this and stuff. And she just, she had to put me in my place. So I don't, in one way, it was like, oh, this is so nice to have someone for once take care of me, because I'm always taking care of everybody else. So it was nice for her to take care of me. And at the same time, the day I was getting out of the hospital, my son at high school dropped a 50-pound dumbbell on his thumb and was rushed to the emergency room. He almost lost the top of his